Hi everyone, it's Jessica, and today is the ninth installment of my 10 Days of Truth, sharing openly and honestly about my own struggles with mental illness in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. I talked a little bit yesterday about my anxiety and sort of how all of that began, and I was talking about how I am having kind of a hard time in these videos explaining and really articulating what it feels like and what the experience is like to struggle with depression and to struggle with anxiety. And so I thought that today I would try to illustrate that in a different way by using some visuals and some words from other people that have really resonated with me over the past few years. Something that was sort of my first foray into being more open and honest and more transparent about my own struggles with mental illness was my Tumblr presence. I actually have a really amazing community of primarily educators who I connect with and have been connecting with. I would say that Tumblr was actually my first education PLN, and before I knew what a PLN was, and professional learning network, for those of you who don't know, or personal learning network, depending on how you look at it. But this was a really amazing support for me when I first started teaching. And so I actually got into Tumblr because of the education community, but I found a lot of like-minded people. And I also found it to be a really inclusive and safe place for me to be able to start sharing things. I think one thing that's helpful is just to be able to like reblog something that you find helpful from someone else. So when I would find an image or a poem or a piece of writing that somebody else had done that really spoke to me and felt representative of my experience, I could reblog it and not have to come up with the words on my own, but be able to reshare that with others and sort of pass it along and pay it forward, but also be able to sort of put my own stamp on it, either just by commenting on it or by just resharing it and in essence saying like, I believe this too, or I have experienced this too. So I started going back through my Tumblr archive. We'll put the links below to some of my archive for anxiety, some of my archive for depression, but I also wanted to show all of you some of the things that kind of stuck out to me. The first one that I think kind of just sums up the point where I'm at now is like, I want to talk to you about my diagnosis, but I'm scared of how you'll react. And this particular one is about PTSD, but that idea of like, I'm taking my heart out and I'm showing it to others is really how I feel. And that summed up for me that vulnerability and not knowing how people will react and sort of being like, I want to talk to you more about this, but I don't know how to talk about it. And I definitely don't know how to bring it up, particularly if you have social anxiety, which I do. That can be really hard to sort of take that first step and be like, because like, what do you even say? Like, hey, so, I really trust you and I kind of was wondering, can we talk about my anxiety? And I don't really know what I want to say, but I feel like I want to talk to you about it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's not something that I feel comfortable doing. And so even when it comes up in passing conversation, it's really hard for me to talk to. And I find that I think probably the way that I respond when it does become a topic of conversation probably indicates to the person who I'm talking to that I don't want to be talking about it. And so they probably don't dig very deep into the conversation or continue the conversation for very long, which I actually would really like to do that. And I think I not necessarily would enjoy it, but kind of would enjoy it in a way, like it would just be nice to be able to have those conversations. And I think it's really helpful. It's just not something that I really know how to navigate. So that was just kind of something that I thought like, yep, that's kind of where I'm at. And the way that you talk to these different people, they've sort of got like partner, boss, family, friends, and the way that you talk to those different people actually has to be different as well. And that also like further complicates things, just when you're trying to have those conversations. There are some amazing comics and illustrations that are available that talk about mental illness. And I think that, infographics in general can be helpful, visuals can be helpful, but there's something about a comic that captures the essence of the human experience, I think, better than like an infographic or something where, it's more representative of data. I think that that's been really helpful for me, and a lot of the visuals that I really am drawn to, they tend to be comics. So, if you're looking for illustrations of some of these things, I highly recommend just doing an image search, and, you can even put in like anxiety comic or anxiety cartoon, and you'll find a lot of things. Obviously, some of them are inaccurate, but, I think they also allow the artist to really speak to their own experience, and you can start to look through and find the things that then speak to your experience. This is like a typical interaction in my brain on any given moment. This idea of like, someone is mad, what did I do? Or, the landlady mistakenly leaves a notice to vacate form, and then I'm sitting on the couch, we're homeless, it's my fault for leaving things on the porch. There was actually an ongoing incident with our HOA our homeowners association, when we were in the process of redoing our landscape, and we were xeriscaping and putting in drought resistant plants and things. And this was it ended up being like a 2-year ongoing kind of thing. And so we would get notices and things from them a lot, fines and whatnot, because they didn't understand what they had approved in our yard. And every single time we would get one, I literally remember one point, like, receiving one of these letters, and my husband came home from work and found me just like sitting in the bedroom on the floor with this letter, just like sobbing and just like distraught, because I was just like so worried about it and so concerned about it. So, that bit kind of resonated with me. Friend will answer the phone. She hates me. Boss calls into the office. I'm fired. And then you can see like the boss is saying, you got a raise. And it's like the first thing that happens when someone says, "Can I talk to you?" is my brain starts going a mile a minute about all of the things that it might be, and I start thinking like, what did I do wrong? What are all the things that I could have done better? What could this possibly be about? Like my head starts going down all those different paths, and it's usually negative paths. It's very rarely, if ever, like a positive thing. Like, oh, I really did well with that, session that I facilitated. They're going to give me a kudos. I don't think I've ever said that to myself. It's generally always like, oh my gosh, what did I do? How did I mess up? Which is really funny for me, because like if I compare the data of like how often that's actually happened, it doesn't. But that's what anxiety does to you. It creates this like it creates this trickery in your brain, and that's just automatically where you go. So then it's further complicated if someone's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you about something," and then it's like, "Can we talk 3 days from now?" And so I'll spend 3 days like doing that in my head. Not super fun. I thought that this one was really interesting, like what anxiety feels like. And that's kind of how it feels sometimes, is that like there's this wall, and your head is telling you like there's no wall there, but then your head is also telling you there's a wall there and you can't get past it. So there are often times where I actually feel like there is a wall between me and the person I am talking to, or me and the situation I am trying to engage in. And it's just hard to like get past it and get through it. And and then there's also just the like sort of pick yourself up and get over the wall kind of a bit of that too, which it's not that easy. I thought this was representative of what someone with anxiety actually hears. And it's like, "Can I talk to you in my office?" And then you hear, "Can I see you in my office so I can fire you and ruin your life?" Or like, "Why don't you just call them instead of texting?" Oh God, please don't make me do that. Like when someone's like, "I'm fine," and you're thinking, "They're not fine, and it's all my fault." Like that happens to me quite frequently, where I'll think that I'll just start being like, "Oh, what's wrong? How is this person feeling? Like, what did I do? What could I have done better or differently?" This one is pretty common for me too. "We're going to the movies. You can come if you want." And I hear like, "I absolutely do not want you to come. Please don't come to the movies." And it's just, that's what happens, is your brain starts to take you in those places, even though there's a part of you that knows that like that doesn't make any sense, and there's no data to back this up, and this person isn't angry at you. This person doesn't care if you come to the movies or not with them, but that's not what you hear. And I think the other thing that's complicated for me too is that like I am a perfectionist and I am an empath, and I do like not read into, but pick up on and sense people's emotions and things like that. And so there are a lot of times where I'm more tuned into those things than others. And so that's also the tricky thing for me, is like separating my anxiety from just those strengths. Because the anxiety part would be the part that's not necessarily a strength. That would be the part where it's like, I need to learn how to not jump to those conclusions, or not hear the negative, or not feel anxious about those certain things. But then there's also some of those things are just the positive attributes of my personality and who I am, and being able to pick up on those cues is also important. So it's like, I don't want to just get rid of that, but for me to figure out which is sometimes a little bit harder for me to do. This one, again, like just kind of having all these thoughts in your head, and just like, I'm so embarrassed by my own existence and worried about what other people think about me, and I can't function. And I would say that's a more severe experience for me. I don't feel that way all the time, but when I am sort of having a more severe bout of anxiety or depression, or particularly when the two are hanging out together, which is always my favorite, that's sometimes how I feel too. It's just you can't turn your brain off, and it's telling you all these things, and it just like drains all of your confidence, and it takes away all of your belief in yourself, I guess. And it's really hard to kind of move past that, I suppose. Another thing that I want to kind of illustrate really quickly is just the flip side of that, which is like my depression. If you have never seen Hyperbole and a Half, I highly recommend the blog posts and the illustrations themselves are just always really great. Depression, a lot of times it feels like you're just telling yourself, like, stop being sad, just get up, and you just can't. And you trying to will yourself to do something that every ounce of your being is fighting against is not only really difficult, but extremely exhausting as well. So this is another hyperbole and a half illustration here, and basically what this is saying is that when you're a kid, you can pick up really any toy and just have fun with it, and you're creative and imaginative, and just like everything is fun, like the cardboard box your toy comes in is fun, and that eventually you get to this point where you pick up all the same toys but they're not fun, and you play all the same games with them, and you try to do all the same things, but the joy just isn't there anymore, and you're not really sure why. And this illustration is really saying, like, that's kind of what it felt like the first time they experienced depression. It's just that idea of like, oh, I'm going through all the same emotions, but it's not bringing me joy. And I'm sort of just like, oh, it's a bus. I used to have so much fun, and now it's just a bus. Like, that's all I see is just this thing, and it's not exciting anymore. And I think that maybe for somebody who hasn't experienced depression might be, an interesting way to think about it. That things that once were invigorating or fun or joyful or that energized you just aren't anymore, and you don't really know why. Like, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just like, oh, now I don't care. And it's not that you don't want to care, but you just don't. There's this line in here that really spoke to me. It says, "The beginning of my depression had been nothing but feelings, so the emotional deadening that followed was a welcome relief. I had always wanted to not give a fuck about anything. I viewed feelings as a weakness, annoying obstacles on my quest for total power over myself, and I finally didn't have to feel them anymore." I have experienced that many times. If you scroll through my Tumblr search that I'll put down below in the links, you can see some posts that I've written, one in particular that I was just reading back through today that talks about I'm tired of thinking, I'm tired of why do I have to be so responsible, and why do I have to be so caring, and why do I have to be so just like wrapped up in my own thoughts all the time, and those are things that I feel and think on a fairly regular basis, that like sometimes it would be nice to not think so much. And so I actually experienced this again in I guess it was over winter break, where I really at first it was just like constant emotions, like all of the things that you feel when you first have really bad anxiety and depression. So I was just like bombarded with all those feelings. And then it got to a point where I just didn't care. And that was really scary for me. But it was also actually really nice for a little while. And it was kind of a relief. And it was just nice to have a break from feeling anything at all. And so I think at first, once you reach that point of just like, I don't feel anything. I literally didn't feel anything. I just was, and I didn't have any energy. I didn't have any motivation to do anything. I just sort of was like going through the motions, and mostly just found solace in doing things like laying in bed and watching old reruns of Gilmore Girls, which is sort of like my comfort food, only TV version. But after a while, you get to the point of like, I don't want to live like this, because then you sort of are like, well, what's the point? Like, yeah, it's nice to have a break from all of my emotions and all of my thoughts, but only for a certain amount of time. And then after that, it just feels bad. And you look around and everybody else seems to be like experiencing all these different things. And it's like, that's where the wall comes in too. It's like, I want to go over there and be experiencing things with other people, but I just can't. So hyperbole and a half. Very helpful comics, I think, for people who experience mental illness and who don't. The other things that I pulled up were just some posts from Tumblr, and I just took screenshots of them just to make it easier for showing them on the video. This was an article about 22 things that people with anxiety want others to know during the holidays, but one of the lines I think applies all the time. It's utterly and completely exhausting playing all possible scenarios and conversations out in your mind for weeks ahead of time. And that, I think, even not the weeks ahead of time, but just like in general, that's a lot of times how I feel. It's like, it's exhausting. And I think it just takes a lot of energy for me to just exist. And so I expend a lot of energy on being and just sort of like going through my day. And that can be kind of hard sometimes. This is another one, kind of goes with some of those other things, but social anxiety will make you do weird things, such as holding onto an apple core for 45 minutes during a meeting because you're too anxious to go to the trash can that's 10 feet away. And then someone added, and this is one of the things I love about Tumblr, is that people can like add their own experience and sort of build upon the statement that was made, or the content that's already there, or waiting for someone else to throw out their apple core so it's okay. but waiting a few minutes after they do it so you don't look like you're waiting for them, and trying not to stumble because you know everyone is watching you walk. Feeling really proud and relieved when you arrive back at your seat after having successfully thrown away an apple core like it's a difficult task. Yep. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in a meeting and been like, I really want to throw away this wrapper, but like, I don't want to get up in front of everyone. And what if my wrapper makes too much noise? Like the trash can's over there. And like, I'm calculating like, how long will it take me to get to the trash can? And then if I throw it, and then I get back here, and what if I trip? And like, that's just, yeah, happens all the time. So that really spoke to me. Other thing that I thought was helpful, things people with social anxiety do, go to the bathroom to escape. Yep. I actually had an experience at one of my best friend's housewarming parties, and I had been to her house many, many, many times, and there were literally, I don't even know if you could call it a party. There were literally, I think, 4 people there, one of whom was my husband, and one of whom was my best friend. So I think there were all of 2 or 3 people who I didn't know in the room. And I remember like sitting on the couch feeling so anxious, and I actually like got really anxious ahead of time before we went. And I remember sitting there being like, I don't even know why I'm feeling so much anxiety, but this is really hard. Like, I don't want to be here. And I ended up like just like going to the bathroom and just standing in the bathroom for a while and just like trying to basically get my shit together. And like, that's when it's the most frustrating, is that you look around you at all of the facts that are right in front of you, and like there's literally no reason for you to be feeling that way. And I think that's when it's most bothersome to me. Like when I'm super nervous about something, I understand, I get why I'm feeling anxiety, or if something is really a lot of pressure, or a lot of unknowns, like I can at least chalk it up to like, oh, I can see what's causing this. When you're in a situation where you have literally no idea what's causing it, that I think for me personally is the most annoying, because that's when you really feel I don't know, you feel less than, I guess. And it really makes you feel like, what the hell is wrong with me? Like why? I am an adult, and I am intelligent, and I should be able to like manage this, and I literally don't know why this is happening to me right now. And you feel kind of helpless. And I guess that's the piece that's hard about it too, is you feel helpless. Other things that are on here, are very dwell on a small awkward moment for much longer as necessary. I do that all the time, constantly dwelling on things and like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Did I bother that person when I said that? Did I hurt their feelings? Or preemptively, like I'll be thinking through like, okay, how do I say this so that I don't want to hurt their feelings, but I have to be direct enough that they'll understand what I'm saying. But I also need to be empathetic to their situation, and like constantly playing all of that out. And just being overly concerned about everything that's happening around you all the time. Another thing that I think is valuable to say about my own experience, similar to what are the qualities that are really good about my personality and the things that I want to use in a positive way, and what are the parts that are my mental illness, and being able to figure out the differences. I think that a lot of my like traits of giftedness and just my personality, it tends to like blur the lines from the positive to maybe the negative. And so this one is, talking about compassion, and like compassion hurts. When you feel connected to everything, you also feel responsible for everything, and you cannot turn away. Your destiny is bound with the destinies of others. You must either learn to carry the universe or be crushed by it. You must grow strong enough to love the world, yet empty enough to sit down at the same table with its worst horrors. And that just really summarizes how I feel a lot of times. Like, sometimes I feel so incredibly exhausted by my level of compassion, and just like it hurts so much. And sometimes I really do say to myself sometimes, like, ignorance is bliss. Why can't I just be, less tuned into all of this stuff? And, because it's hard. It's hard to carry, the weight of the world. And like this says, like, not be crushed by it. But at the same time, when you figure out how to use that in positive ways as a way to like give back and make the world better. And that's where my sense of purpose comes from also, and my sense of fulfillment. And I think my ability to leave a legacy and to really have an impact in the way that I would like on the world. So again, it's a matter of like, how do you use it productively, but not let it, kind of crush you. Again, this is just some gifted traits commonly misdiagnosed as mental health pathology. So I went through this list when I first found it, and I bolded the things that I like always feel, and then I italicized the things that I sometimes feel. So like highly emotional, mood swings, difficulty with transitions. Oh my gosh, transitions are like one of my worst nightmares, particularly if they are not planned, or if they change last minute like that. is not my favorite. Worrier, yeah, that's me. Atypical sense of humor, yeah, but I think a lot of intelligent people have that. That's how I find my tribe. Is like, oh, we get each other's jokes. Okay, this is gonna work. Sensitivity to noise. I can be very sensitive to noise. I also have found a lot of things that are really helpful for me to remind myself, like, you know, depression isn't pretty, but having depression doesn't make you ugly. Anxiety is a burden, but having anxiety doesn't make you a burden. And so it's things like that that I have to remind myself a lot. You know, like, yeah, depression sucks, anxiety sucks, I hate it. Do I wish I didn't have it? Yep, totally. But I guess where I'm at now, and kind of as I come to the end of these 10 days, it's a matter for me of like, yeah, I wish I didn't have those things, but is there a reason that I do? And what can I do, not about it necessarily, but with it? Like, how do I use my experience to help someone else? And I guess that's what these videos are, is, you know, my attempt at understanding myself better, but also my attempt at making the world a better place, and hopefully bringing comfort to someone or helping somebody else understand how to be compassionate to someone who's dealing with a mental illness. And you know, I guess that the more I can remind myself that, and the more that I can share that with others, just the better off we'll be. And so I think for me now, like, it's a matter of thinking about how can I use my struggles to in a productive way, and use my struggles to really better the world. Because you know, I wish that nobody had to deal with these things, but if people do, and if I do, then maybe I can do something with it, and bring purpose to it, I guess, rather than it just being sort of what often feels like a very futile, ongoing battle with yourself. So anyway, probably another super long video, but you know, getting to the end of these 2 days and just really reflecting very deeply and thinking a lot about kind of where to take all of this and how to wrap it all up together, and what to do with it going forward. So that's my video for today. I hope it was helpful in some way. Again, I will put all of the links and credits to all of the things that I shared in the description below. And if you have others that you want to add to the list, that would be really awesome as well. I would love to hear about them. I will talk to you all tomorrow.